Bienvenidos todas y todas a este nuevo contacto internacional en el marco de la consulta por la calidad educativa que desarrollamos. En esta oportunidad conversaremos con Diane Napier. Diana es secretaria general del Consejo Mundial de Sociedades de Educación Comparada, es especialista en educación en ciencias sociales, fue miembro del Instituto de Estudios Africanos y es una investigadora asociada a la dinámica de transformación de los sistemas educativos a escala mundial. Bienvenida, Diana, a este contacto internacional.
Thank you.
Diana, para ti, ¿cuál es el mayor reto, el mayor desafío que presentan los sistemas educativos del mundo en el presente?
I think the biggest challenge is to reconcile internal needs in a country with international standards and priorities.
Diana, si tuvieras que hacer un balance de las reformas educativas ocurridas en el mundo en los últimos 5 años, ¿cuál sería el rango distintivo de estas reformas?
I think on balance, in general, it's been very positive. I think the reforms for democratization and for standards and quality control and education for all have been overall very positive worldwide on balance.
Diana, sin embargo, aún las sociedades en todos los continentes y a escala mundial siguen presionando para que los sistemas educativos cambien. Pareciera que los cambios no son suficientes. ¿Es así?
I think there's a universal push for improving education, for democratizing education, but I also think there is enormous pressure on countries to conform to the world standards. I see that in developing countries I work in all the time. There's the pressure, to participate at the global level, and it's not always compatible with internal needs.
Diana, precisamente uno de los discursos de moda en el presente es el asociado a la calidad educativa. Para ti, ¿qué es calidad educativa?
Well, I've just finished a book come out on qualities of education worldwide. So one thing is how complex quality is and how, there are standard definitions of quality in terms of performance, achievement, the quality of the system, but then so many other dimensions of quality that it's a much more complex undertaking than often people recognize. The most common association of quality is with international comparisons of student performance, like on PISA, TIMSS, PEARLS, etc. But that is only one way of measuring quality. So it's actually very complicated. And there again are things inside countries that determine, aspects of quality and how to improve quality.
Precisamente, Diana, en nuestro país y en el continente, también en el mundo, hay una polémica sobre la utilidad de las pruebas PISA, TIMSS, de los rankings universitarios. ¿Tú crees que su aplicación contribuye a tener información adecuada para que los decisores transformen los sistemas educativos o simplemente son un marco general de referencia que pretende igualarnos con las grandes potencias?
I'll give you a two-part answer. First, I think that PISA, TIMSS, IEA, Civic Education, PEARLS, all of them, they provide very valuable information for all countries that participate. And so, they have significant usefulness that's been documented. But there's the controversy for me also, I agree, comes where often these are developed country reforms, if you like, that drive reform and ideas in many other countries where they don't necessarily fit. For example, South Africa has had disastrous results in TIMSS and PEARLS and IEA, last in the rankings, because they focused not on what was needed at home, but on being competitive internationally. So I think the controversy comes when the results of these cross-national studies are not used in a contextually appropriate way. They have very valuable insight, and they do provide benchmarks which are very helpful, I think, to guide reforms in all countries. But if they're overused and they're taken out of local context, that's where the trouble arises. In the work that we've just published, we have cases from South Africa, from Kazakhstan as another example, from Brazil, Cuba, where the use of those tests results sometimes is very good. Look how well Cuba scores on international tests, and so it's a measure of the quality of their system. In Kazakhstan, they're like South Africa, and that is the results have been bad, and there's been so much concentration on doing well in PISA rather than training and supporting teachers.
Sin embargo, Diana, queda algo en evidencia o claramente definido. Se requieren sistemas de medición en los países. No tanto las pruebas estandarizadas globales, pero sí sistemas que permitan hacer un seguimiento al rendimiento de los sistemas educativos en cada país. ¿Es así o cuál es tu opinión?
Yes, I think so. I think most countries have adopted that model. And I think if you look, like in Latin America, there are national and then regional and macro-regional systems in place. One of the authors in the book that I've just finished looks at Brazil and all the different systems of reform and quality measures in Brazil within the whole Latin American system. So I think those systems are in place or are being developed, and I think it's very necessary to do that. Otherwise, you don't know what progress is being made. But it's if the imperatives are being driven by some other country elsewhere, like the United States or European countries, rather than coming from within the country and region, then there can be a mismatch. In sub-Saharan Africa, there's a system similar to that in Latin America with SATIL. There is SACMEC, which is a series of Southern and East African countries have their own systems for assessing quality, where they take into account the regional realities rather than going to PISA and TIMSS and PEARLS at the world level. So I think those systems are very valuable for charting the progress that's being made and what's needed, but especially if they are focused on regional and national needs, not just, jumping on an international bandwagon.
Diana, la mayoría de los sistemas de medición enfatizan en los aprendizajes, pero pocos abordan el tema de los docentes. Pareciera entonces, se hace una falsa analogía, si hay malos aprendizajes, lo que no funcionan son los docentes. Sin embargo, al no evaluarse los docentes, hay unos precarios sistemas de acompañamiento de la formación docente. ¿Cuáles serían las tareas urgentes en materia de formación docente para alcanzar una educación de calidad?
Yeah, I think teacher training issues linked to these systems of quality measures are among the most important. And I think like in TIMSS, in all the TIMSS studies, they recognize that now for a number of years. But for teachers to be trained in how to implement content standards, to be trained and supported in how to actually, foster different styles of learning. If you don't train and support teachers, the system breaks down. And so I think teacher training and support is one of the most important issues, and it has to be examined within a given country alongside the performance. What do the results mean? Includes how were the kids taught, and how do they acquire the skills to do well or poorly on the tests. So teachers are very often neglected. Worldwide, that is an issue. Are teachers included, and are their needs taken into account, and are they trained and supported sufficiently?
Diana, acaba de culminar un libro que da cuenta del debate educativo mundial. ¿Cuáles son los grandes aprendizajes que ha obtenido en la construcción de este libro que acaba de terminar?
Well, as I said before, that study showed in more than a dozen countries and then worldwide that quality is much more complicated than just what students score on PISA, Pearls, TIBS, or whatever. It's about much more than performance. That there is a great deal related to quality in the learning environment and also in conceptions of what quality should be in a given country, and in the historical context and in the policy context. So that what overall the studies showed was that there is valuable information in these worldwide conventional measures of quality, but it's not enough alone. That one also has to really understand the realities within a country, and including things like language. What language do students learn in? What language do teachers teach in? And what is the language of the test? So overall, it's not one or the other. It's much more complicated than initially thought, and it demands qualitative research as well as quantitative, because you have to find ways to understand what teachers are facing. That's been proven in Finland, for example. If they score so well, the studies looking at how teachers are trained and how students learn have helped to explain the high scores. With Africans who do not speak English as their first language, with Native Americans, with cultural and language factors, the scores are often terrible. Well, it's a nightmare of trying to learn and then be tested in a foreign language. So I think overall, the awareness of much greater complexity is what has been the lesson learned. And that you can't just take the American phrase of one size fits all. It doesn't apply worldwide.
Diana, vamos a soñar. Si nuestros sistemas educativos te pidieran 3 recomendaciones para transformarlos rápidamente y alcanzar una educación de calidad, ¿cuáles serían esas 3 recomendaciones?
It's difficult. Well, first I would have to say the focus on training and supporting teachers with whatever the content and the priorities are. Without them, it doesn't work. That's been proven. So, secondly, is to look carefully at the implementation timeline. How fast or how much time is allotted? What is the pacing? In many countries, people have tried to implement reforms very quickly. 3 years, 5-year development plan, quick. And meaningful reform takes usually a decade or more. So the timing and the pacing are very crucial. And then also, I would say, there needs to be a real focus on who the students and who is the population that one is focusing on. Minority populations, majority culture, etc., where the diversity needs are very crucial. Aside from content, if we let content and skills, knowledge be aside, if one doesn't actually address the needs in a diverse population, then the overall reform falters. That's also been proven. So what did I say? Teachers, training and support, and retraining. In a lot of my work in Southern Africa, one problem was that all the democratization reforms came very quickly, 1994 onwards. But the majority of teachers were trained before that, and they still think like they did in the old days. No retraining means no change. No support means resistance. So teachers, and then the timing and pacing, and then thirdly, how to deal with the diversity. Minority, majority, culture, language, needs, etc. Rural, urban,
Entendí.
that's 3.
Ahora bien, Diana, tú formas parte, eres secretaria general del Consejo Mundial de Sociedades de Educación Comparada. ¿Cuál es el papel del Consejo en alcanzar la educación como un derecho humano fundamental hoy en el mundo?
Yes. That is basically the overall mission, yes, is to improve education worldwide and through comparative education to assist that. Yeah, that's the overall mission, and to support research and other forms of international understanding, research, training, cultural exchange, etc. Yeah. So we have 40 societies now.
Ahora, si tuvieras que focalizar mundialmente en una región que requiere mayor atención en este momento para lograr la educación como derecho humano fundamental, ¿cuál sería esa región?
It's difficult too. If you look at the numbers and the measures, the indicators, the region of Africa is probably the most in need because of also the issues in poverty and disadvantage, differences with male, female, etc. So, I mean, I would not disagree with the fact that if there is a one region of greatest need, we could say it's Africa. But then also within each other region, there are, enormous needs. If you take Latin America, or the Caribbean, there are countries in great need versus countries that are better off. Same in Asia. Perhaps the region that needs the least help, but still wants help, is Europe. But Africa, many countries are in very, very dire need in terms of education. Yeah.
Diana, para ir cerrando este contacto internacional, nos gustaría que le dirigieras un mensaje a los maestros, a las maestras, a los profesores y las profesoras venezolanos y venezolanas que están en sus aulas discutiendo todo el tema de la calidad educativa como una oportunidad para seguir avanzando en la transformación de los sistemas educativos de la región.
My message would be that I'm very pleased that they are involved in the discussions about quality education in Venezuela, because they are on the front line, and that their efforts are among the most important for the reforms to succeed and for quality to be improved. And I think also maybe a message related to balancing what the country, the official Venezuelan policy and reform agenda is, with what they as teachers and professionals themselves are committed to doing to help students learn better. Because often teachers are not asked, well, what about you? What is your commitment, to pupils' learning? It's all mandates from the top. And I think that teachers must see their own professional goals in conjunction with the goals of the country and the regions within it together. I would urge them to do that and to work together with other teachers and with their colleagues in the ministry and the universities so that it truly is a team effort. Yeah.
Conversamos hoy con Diane Napier. Diana es secretaria general del Consejo Mundial de Educación Comparada, especialista en educación en ciencias sociales, fue miembro del Instituto de Estudios Africanos y una estudiosa de los procesos de reformas educativas a escala planetaria. Gracias, Diana, por este contacto, por haber participado en este contacto internacional.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Can I just say one thing? Thank you for giving me the chance to be interviewed. And I think this is a very interesting project. And I hope that you will keep me in touch with the project as it moves forward. I would be very interested to stay involved and to read the outcomes.